Florida presents unique issues. It's very coastal, very low-lying, and the Florida Keys, which stretch out into the ocean, a dotted archipelago connected by a single low road, are currently in Irma's projected path. Our correspondent Steve Mort is there, and he told us Irma is forecast to hit in the next 72 hours, and people are getting out.
The major problem with that is that the Miami area has a population of some 6 million people, sort of very much like the population of the greater Houston area that, of course, we saw devastated by the floodwaters from Hurricane Harvey. The slight difference here is that Miami actually sits much closer to the coastline than Houston, right along the coast. In fact, there is no section of the Miami area that isn't more than about 30 kilometers wide, but it does stretch for about 150 kilometers or so north to south. So a very large, very densely populated corridor of people. And it's extremely low-lying, and that is the major concern for a lot of folks here, because this area does tend to flood even during regular afternoon storms during the summertime, because it's so low-lying. And when you have the amount of rain that is expected to come from this storm pouring in through both rainfall and storm surge, then really you have a major flood risk, whether or not the eye of the hurricane makes landfall in Miami or not. So that is one of the key concerns that we're seeing here this time around, whether or not the hurricane is going to make landfall and the rain making that it's going to do. Preparations are in full swing here, of course. The state of emergency is in effect for the entire state. The Governor, Rick Scott, telling people in Miami to make their way to higher ground. There is a mandatory evacuation order in place for the Florida Keys. That's a low-lying chain of islands that stretches out into the Caribbean Sea to the south of Miami. Long queues of traffic trying to get off those islands. Around where I am here in Orlando, we're expecting a lot of rain as well, and I was just driving around a couple of the petrol stations here. Many of those petrol stations are now completely out of fuel. People are buying up supplies while they can. Long lines at the grocery stores in this area. People buying up as much water as they can. Oftentimes water supplies can be cut when there is major damage to infrastructure in the wake of these storms. And I'll tell you, a lot of people that I've spoken to are taking no chances because of what they've seen in recent days in Houston. Florida's no stranger to major hurricanes, but one of this strength hasn't really hit this state in recent years. Anything basically equivalent was back in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew devastated sections of Miami. The Florida Governor, Rick Scott, saying that this storm, this time around, could be worse than Andrew. It might not be, but it could. And people seem to be, at this instance, taking that advice to heart and really getting the supplies and getting prepared when they can.
Steve Mort in Florida.